Hello and welcome to BYJU'S Exam Prep IAS. Before we begin today's session of the comprehensive news analysis, a very important and useful announcement for all of you. BYJU'S Exam Prep IAS is bringing to you the Target Mains 2020 program. This program starts on the 13th of June, in which every single day till the mains examination, we will be discussing with you important topics, the probable questions that can be asked from those topics, and also the model answers on those topics. This program will focus a lot on answer writing techniques, and we will be giving you model answers to all of those important questions. We will cover classes of all the important subjects for the UPSC mains examination, including the topics that were in the news in the past year or so. So it gives you an exclusive coverage of the current affairs and of the static topics. Do remember, this program is exclusively on the BYJU'S Exam Prep app only. So if you have still not downloaded the app, please do that right away. The first two classes, that is on 13th and 14th of June, will be on YouTube channel as well. But starting from the 15th of June, the classes will be exclusively only on the BYJU'S Exam Prep app, starting with 7:30 p.m. every single evening. Do download the app and take advantage of these sessions. This program is entirely free of cost and is open for every UPSC aspirant out there. Now let's begin our analysis with the first article that we have here, focusing on the problems that the Surat diamond trade industry is facing right now. Now, as you would have read multiple times, that due to the ongoing war between Russia and Ukraine, a lot of sectors, not just in India but around the world, have been impacted negatively. You talk about the oil sector, the oil prices are increasing. You talk about the natural gas. We have talked about wheat also, how the global food grain prices are also increasing. But the one sector that we did not really talk about is the diamond trade sector that is specifically concentrated in India's Surat. Now, as you know, Surat is regarded as the hub of diamond polishing industry around the world. So understand this. We do not really produce a lot of raw material when it comes to diamond. What India specializes in is that we get the raw diamonds from outside and then we polish it to convert this into its best possible form. Now the problem that is happening here is that a lot of that raw diamond actually comes from Russia. And a lot of that diamond, after it is polished in Surat, actually goes and gets sold in the US. But because the US government now has banned importing products from Russia or the products that are made in Russia initially, that is why the Surat diamond trade industry now is facing a big crisis. Number one, the supply of raw material from Russia anyways has declined because of the ongoing war, and whatever raw material that they have, they're not being able to sell the finished products in US because now they don't want any product that originated in Russia. That is the entire problem here, because of which a lot of people working in the diamond polishing industry in Surat, especially at smaller and medium sized establishments, are actually going out of work. A lot of these places do not have any work in the past 3 months or so, ever since the Ukraine Russia crisis has started. That is why people from the diamond polishing industry have been urging the government of India to intervene and to find a way out for them. Compared to other sectors, the diamonds and the gem sector in India has actually seen the most hit because of the Russia-Ukraine crisis, because the raw material supply is highly dependent on Russia. The interesting part about this sector is that during the lockdown, the exports from this sector actually increased because there was a shift in pattern seen across the world. Even right now in the US society, it has been a trend that increasing number of youngsters now are buying diamonds, not really for ornaments, but to invest in the diamond market, which actually gave a big boom to the diamond industry in Surat. However, that has also declined because the raw material dependency on Russia now is working against them. The diamond polishing industry in itself is a huge part of India's GDP. The total exports of gems and jewels in 2021-22 was about $37 billion, which was a $10 billion jump as compared to the last year. It was one of the few industries that did not have any negative impact of the COVID-19 pandemic. Now, the Indian diamond industry has a lot of very interesting facts that you must understand and remember. As we discussed, India is the world's hub of cutting and polishing diamonds and accounts for over 90% of polished diamonds manufactured globally. We don't have a lot of raw diamonds, although we do have a few mines in Madhya Pradesh specifically, but Most of the diamond that we get is imported from nations around the world, including South Africa, Russia, Australia, etc. The reason why India has been able to ensure that we have a monopoly in diamond polishing industry is because of the cutting edge technology, the low cost of labor, and highly skilled labor that is present in India. India accounted for 19% share in the world's total export of diamonds during 2019. In Feb 2021, India's gold and diamond trade contributed close to 5% of India's GDP and 14% of India's total merchandise export. So, this is a sector that we cannot afford to ignore. Realizing this importance, the Government of India also permitted 100% FDI in the sector under the automatic route. The market size of gems and jewelry export is very, very high. The government of India is aiming to touch $70 billion in jewelry export in the next 5 years. But for that to happen, we have to ensure that these kind of roadblocks are actually dealt with. Now, what can be the way around this? One interesting idea as an alternate to this is the concept of lab grown diamonds. Now, this was in the news recently as well, that the Indian government also is focusing on lab grown diamonds after the Ukraine war. Now, as the name suggests, lab grown diamonds are artificial diamonds that are actually generated in a lab. These are the diamonds which are exported in some quantity to US, Hong Kong, UAE, Israel, Belgium, etc. Because they are man-made, they are obviously much cheaper. They look and feel exactly the same as a mined diamonds, and that is something which we can actually use as an alternative. Now, there are both good and bad aspects to it. The good aspects are that we won't be dependent on other nations for the import of raw diamonds if we switch to lab grown diamonds. But the bad part is that what will happen to those people who have spent years and years of their life developing the skill of diamond polishing, because their expertise is in polishing natural diamonds, real diamonds, and not lab grown diamonds. So government has to ensure that we shift the labor force from the real diamond industry to the lab grown diamond industry if we have to ensure that the people are not thrown out of their jobs. The lab grown diamonds are those which are grown inside the lab using multiple technologies. The processes involve high pressure, high temperature, which is used in China, and chemical vapor deposition, which is used in USA and in India. These kind of diamonds are used in jewelry industry, even in computer chips, satellites, 5G networks, etc. India does have a bit of market of the lab grown diamonds. We did export a few of it to US, Hong Kong, UAE, Israel, etc. But there's a lot of scope to increase it to decrease India's dependence on other nations for raw diamonds. The next article that we have here is from the state of Tamil Nadu, where the government is trying to promulgate an ordinance to ban online gaming, or at least to regulate it in some regards. Now, we did discuss about this topic a few days back of how multiple states across India, not just Tamil Nadu, states such as Karnataka, etc., are trying to take action against online gaming. Now, online gaming can be of different types. You would have seen a lot of ads of online rummy. You would have seen ads of other card games that are being played online these days that got a major push during the pandemic. Now, the problem with these kind of things is that there have been a lot of reports which indicate how people are getting addicted to these games. So much so that they are losing a lot of money online because a lot of these games ask you to invest some money in return of a chance of winning a huge prize. People thus are actually going into debt, so much so that there have been reports of people stealing money or even committing suicide when they can't afford to pay back the money. All of that now has forced the governments across the country to take action against this. Now, the governments in certain states did take action, Tamil Nadu being one of them. In fact, last year, the Tamil Nadu government had actually introduced a law banning online gaming, but this law was actually taken down by the Madras High Court. Similar kind of things have happened in other states where the state legislatures have tried to ban these online games, but their high courts have taken out these bans. Now, what is happening is that the Tamil Nadu government has made a committee to examine these issues of online gaming and submit a report about what steps should we take. Okay, if we can't ban it completely, then how do we regulate it? That is what the committee will report on. The committee will also collect a lot of data from the people who have been affected with online gaming. Now, over here, there's a very interesting phrase that is used that is called empirical data. Now, this is important because in the past few years, we have seen that whenever such kind of a case about banning something or about implementing an idea, be it reservation, be it something else, the courts across the country usually stress on empirical data. For example, when we had this case of having reservation in promotion also, the Supreme Court kept on saying that we will only allow it if you have empirical data to prove the same. And the same has been highlighted in other cases also. That is why now governments across the country, whenever they are trying to bring such a law, they also focus on ensuring that they have enough empirical data to prove their stand. As per the government reports, many people are falling into debt trap, being addicted. In fact, the reason why it is happening is that in India, the internet data is extremely affordable now. We have increasing number of people using smartphones. During pandemic, especially a lot of people were hooked up to these games, and that is why states across the country now have to take action. Now, let me share with you the current status of online gaming in India. As I said, Tamil Nadu is not the only state that actually is worried about this problem. We have states such as Telangana, Andhra Pradesh, Karnataka, even Rajasthan trying to regulate online gaming in some way or the other. The reason why they are doing this is because this comes under the state list as per the 7th schedule of the Indian Constitution. The growth of online gaming in the past couple of years has been tremendous. There was a report by the Boston Consultancy Group, the famous consultant company called the BCG, which said in India's mobile gaming sector will grow from $1.5 billion in revenue to $5 billion by 2025 because of multiple reasons, including the ease of use of UPI and other payment techniques, penetration of smartphones with increasing number of people having access to it, and one of the cheapest internet data rates across the world because of the geo revolution. All of that has now resulted in a lot of people playing these online games without even knowing before they get hooked onto them. Now, there's also a question of legality of online games in India. I discussed with you earlier as well. Whenever the courts have had to decide whether these games should be allowed or not, the courts ask one simple question. That question is whether this is a game of skills or this is a game of chance. If it is a game of chance, that is, it does not depend upon what you do and what you don't do, then the government of India or the courts will not allow it. But so far, the companies have been able to prove that their games, be it online rummy, be it fantasy games where you make your cricket teams, all of those are games of skill. As long as they have proven that these are games of skills, these have been allowed. This is what the question is. There are a lot of different games that are existing in India right now. As I said, you see a lot of these ads during the IPL and the cricket matches when they ask you to make a team, and then on the basis of that you can beat your friends, etc. Then there are online rummy, online ludo, etc. All these are ads that you keep on seeing day in and day out. The one other interesting phrase here is common gaming house. Common gaming house basically is a place wherein you can invite people to play these kind of games. Now, as per the law in India, owning or having charge of such a common gaming house, which you can also call casinos, are actually banned in most of the states in India. A common gaming house can be a house, walled enclosure, room, or a place where the instruments of gaming are kept for the purpose of profit. These are banned in most of the states in India, but I can give you certain exceptions. If you have been to Sikkim, or if you actually go to Sikkim, especially if you go to Gangtok, when you enter Gangtok by road, you see a lot of hoardings of casinos where you are invited to play these kind of games because in Sikkim it is allowed. Similarly, in Goa also, it is allowed on certain ships. So there are certain ships which have been designed and made in a form of casino. You can go there and you can play such kind of games, card games, etc. in certain states. So it depends on state to state. The states which are mainly dependent on tourism have actually allowed these kind of casinos to exist in their state, but in most other states, these are banned. The next article that we have here is about the fishermen and the problem that they're facing, especially in Gujarat. Now, India is blessed to have a lot of states that have large coastline, Gujarat being one amongst them. Having a large coastline means that there are a lot of people who are dependent on fishing as their primary source of earning. But in the past few months, there have been a lot of problems in this particular regard. The number of fish are decreasing, the fuel prices are increasing, so it is becoming extremely difficult to actually have their boats or ships operating. Not just this, even the freight charges, that is the transportation charges to transport ship from one place to the other, is increasing. All of that combined means that the fishermen are having an extremely tough time to survive in this scenario in Gujarat. The article says that over 5 lakh people are dependent in the fisheries sector in Gujarat, and Gujarat is one of the largest exporting states in terms of volume. However, we are losing out on a lot of business because we have not been able to get a lot of orders from China, European Union, etc. The fishermen also point out that the government of India does not have a free trade agreement or other kind of agreements with EU which Vietnam has. That is why the market from Vietnam is much more in touch with the European Union, and they are getting much more orders from European Union in terms of fishing products as compared to India. Oil prices, freight charges, all of that have actually added to the woes of the fishermen in India. The article also tells you how the prices of fish in the wholesale market have declined considerably. Also, because at least half of these fishermen who actually work are women, it also impacts the women in work. That is why the government should pay special attention towards this. Now, has the government done something in this regard or not? The answer actually is yes, they have. But before we do that, there is one other point of view that you have to understand. See, there is a common problem that you would see with respect to fishermen in Gujarat and in Tamil Nadu. When they don't have enough catch, when they don't have enough fish, they tend to go further and they tend to extend their jurisdiction. Knowingly or unknowingly, they actually then enter the other country's waters. In case of Tamil Nadu, they enter the Sri Lankan water. In case of Gujarat, they enter the Pakistani waters, which results in these fishermen getting caught by the other side. This happens in Gujarat. This happens in Tamil Nadu also all too often. Now, this then starts a problematic process where the two sides have to get in touch with each other. These fishermen are then missing for a few days. They may not be treated well, and then there are a lot of problems that arise. Because of this, also, the government has had to take special efforts to ensure that these fishermen don't go to the other side. The one example of an initiative that the government of India very recently took is called the Sagar Parikrama. This is an initiative started by the Ministry of Fisheries, Animal Husbandry and Dairying, under which they are conducting a kind of a journey or a survey to understand the problem of coastal fisher folk. Interestingly, this actually started from Gujarat only, and it is a part of Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav celebrations by the government of India. It started from Gujarat's Mandvi in the first phase, and it will cover all the coastal districts of Gujarat and other states along the western coast of India. The entire distance will be covered from the coastline of Mandvi on the coast of Arabian Sea in the Kutch district of Gujarat. The idea is to engage with as many fisher folk as possible, to understand their concerns, and then to come up with policies which can be effective for their survival. India right now is the second major producer of fish through aquaculture in the world, and it adds consistently to India's GDP and employment year after year. That is why the government of India cannot ignore it. Currently, this sector provides livelihood to more than 2.8 crore people in the country. That is both direct and indirect employment added. Also, the fisheries sector has seen double digit average annual growth since 2014-15 and has been a major driver of growth in this part of the country. The next article that we have here is an interesting argument that is given by the former CAG of India, Sri Rajiv Maharishi. He says that the CAG in India faces a lot of pressure and does not have enough powers to hold the government department accountable. He said during a lecture that the CAG in India does not even meet the standards of the common chartered accountants when it comes to assurances. Meaning that whenever the CAG contacts a government department, whenever they ask for data, the government departments in a lot of these cases just reply by saying that they have lost the file or they don't have the data. Because the CAG is running on such a tight deadline, that is year after year they have to present so many reports and they have to audit so much data, that the government departments take undue advantage of this. As per Mr. Maharishi, a lot of times the government departments only give that information which they want the CAG to see and hide the other things which they think are actually bad or would give a wrong impression to the CAG. And CAG, on the other hand, does not have any legal powers to force the government departments to give them that data. In fact, the CAG officials work on a very, very strict timeline. The problem is that 25% of expenditure of the state governments are labeled as other expenditures. Means there is no detail given over whether or not this expenditure was legal, where was this money spent, and the CAG cannot haggle with them, cannot spend a lot of time on this. That is why the effectiveness of the CAG in the country has been reduced drastically. This is what the ex-CAG of India is actually lamenting on. That if you want the CAG to work effectively, you have to give them enough powers and enough backing of the laws to ask questions to the government department. Now, the importance of CAG is not lost on anyone. Everyone understands that keeping the government accountable, especially towards the expenditure, is one of the most important functions of a democracy. And this responsibility has been given to the CAG. Dr. B.R. Ambedkar also very famously said that, in my opinion, the CAG is the most important officer in the Constitution of India. That is why the importance of CAG has to be realized by each and everyone. Now, in the past, a lot of reforms have been suggested of how can we make the CAG more powerful. Some of these were suggested by Mr. Vinod Rai, who himself was a former CAG. He said that all the public-private partnerships, Panchayati Raj institutions, government-funded societies, all of these should be under the CAG, which is not the case right now. Also, the CAG Act of 1971 should be amended to ensure that whenever a new kind of an expense comes or whenever a new kind of a fund is initiated by the government, it is also within the purview of the CAG. Also, the other problems with the CAG include that the appointment process is not very transparent. There is no consultation, there is no one from the outside of the government that is involved. Also, there is no proper qualification criteria that is given for the CAG's eligibility. That also has to change. Much like the CVC that is appointed by a 3-member committee, the CAG is not appointed by any such committee, which also has to change. Also, let me take this opportunity to make a bit of comparison between Indian and the British CAG. Now, the office of the CAG in India has been derived from Britain, but there is a lot of difference between the Indian CAG and the British CAG. If you look at the full form of CAG, it stands for Comptroller and Auditor General. But the interesting part is that in India, the CAG is only given the job of an auditor and not comptroller. Comptroller means someone who is controlling the expenses of the government, which is not the case in India. In Britain, the government cannot spend even one single rupee without the CAG's permission, which is not the case with India. In India, the role of CAG only starts after the government has already spent the money. So in short, the CAG in India cannot stop the government from spending money, while the British CAG can, because it is the permission of the British CAG that is required by the British government to spend any money, which is not the case in India. Also, in Britain, CAG is more of a member of the ruling party. So CAG in Britain is actually a member of the House of Commons, that is a lower house, while in India that is not the case. In India, CAG is not a member of parliament. The CAG is not a member of the cabinet. The CAG is not from the ruling party. Rather, CAG is a constitutional position who is expected to perform the functions independently. So while we have taken the office of the CAG from Britain, there are still a lot of striking differences between the Indian and the British CAG. These are the important articles on the Hindu newspaper today. Now a couple of practice questions. Number 1. In its current form, the CAG of India is far from the kind of office that Ambedkar had envisaged. In this context, discuss the reforms needed to make the CAG of India more effective. Second, discuss the various initiatives taken by the Government of India to propel the fisheries sector in India. Both these questions have to be answered within 250 words each. Thank you so much for watching the video.